there. Of course, considering that if we get a season, of course, that you're looking at teams. All those teams could be. You can make an argument being top 100 in the state of Florida, and they got obviously minus Valdosta, who might be top 50 in the nation. But of course, in the state of Georgia, you got a lot of teams right there that they're going to have to basically adjust quickly, or they could potentially start the season 0-4.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I'm not abreast on 6A up north, but I do know that this is, when we get to the central part and down in this way, I mean, you certainly have some teams in Miami. The Miami region in 6A is just brutal.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Central, I guess we'll go ahead and the Central teams for 6A. 6A, the teams I definitely would say worth keeping an eye on. Tampa Gayford, they came out of nowhere, it seemed. 12-2 season, Final Four trip, and they've been picking up some solid players locally from transfers. And then I've also heard good things about Auburndale and Lake Gibson out of Polk County. Of course, what's interesting with you have Tampa Gayford, who's in Region 2, and then you have Polk County's teams with Auburndale and Lake Gibson. They're in Region 3. And personally, I thought, isn't Polk County supposed to be considered more north than Tampa?
Yeah, I thought so.
And it's just weird to see putting Polk County in the south and Hillsborough in the north.
Yeah, no, it is, but there's a lot, and you and I are going to talk about it coming up. There's a lot that when it comes to the FHSAA that eludes me.
And then also, in terms of sleepers, one team I think might be worth keeping an eye on in 6A with Central area, someone like a South Fort Myers. Like, they did kind of build themselves up to a playoff team last year, despite not really having a lot of success as a program previously. But I can see them being a solid team in that area. And of course, you can also North Fort Myers and Fort Myers as well. But those, it seems like all three of them are finally competitive.
Yeah, and you look in that 9 region, which includes, the teams I know well here in Brevard. Lake Gibson, a hell of a team. Heritage with Coach Mark Ainsley, Heritage out of Palm Bay. Always Field's a good team. They were new to that district last year and just couldn't compete with the likes of Auburndale and Lake Gibson. And, Bayside from Palm Bay here in Brevard County is also in that mix. And, Bayside right now is I wouldn't call them a sleeper, but they got a shot to be a 5-5, 6-4 team this year. You got Corey Broomfield there as the head coach, and of course Corey was an all-SEC defensive back at Mississippi State. So Corey is an alma mater there, and but yeah, as far as that special part, and for me, the Lake Gibsons, the Auburndales, those are the teams.
And we go to 6A South. There's pretty much, I would say, probably the same 3 to keep an eye on this year as we had last year with Miami Central, Naples, and Dillard. And I guess maybe outside team would be someone like maybe a Miami Norland or maybe like a South Miami. But Miami Central, I would say, going into the season, would be close to being as high of a favorite in the 6A South, or at least 6A Region 4, as St. Thomas Aquinas is in 7A4.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, you know what you're going to get out of the Rockets every year. Last year, they were 12-3 state champs. Last year, Miami Central was. This year, I don't know. Let me see if their schedule's up. I don't know if it is. You look at their schedule right now. On the schedule, they got Booker T at Traz Powell right out of the gate on August 28th, Edison, Norland, and Chaminade, Madonna. So, you know what? There's some points there to be had. When you're talking about Booker T, who I firmly expect to be back playing for a state championship this year. So, yeah, I think they come in. I wouldn't say they're quite like St. Thomas, but I certainly think 6A is going to have to run through them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Sam.
Yeah.
In terms of 5A North, there's not really anything significant I could think of off the top of my head. I would say maybe like a Wakulla, maybe a Godby might be worth watching on the western end of North Florida. And in terms of sleepers, I would say some like with Jacksonville, Ed White, Rains, Westside, and Terry Parker. All of them could be solid teams. Everything okay?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Go ahead.
Ed White, Rains, Westside, Terry Parker, maybe even a Reball. Like all these are very balanced teams in 5A up in the Jacksonville area. The one that seems to always it's got my attention right now is Westside. They seem to be clearly building something, and they've just from what I can tell on social media, they pride themselves off of homegrown talent, and it seems to be working. Like there are the players there are buying into the program, and I think that could be part of why you're seeing like a drop with the talent in Lee right now. Is you got teams like Terry Parker and Westside, or even Ed White. They're not losing their players as transfers to Lee. They're keeping their talent in house, which is basically depleted the talent pool over Lee.
Yeah. For me, I have a hard time now. Obviously, you have to follow because of what we have here in Brevard County in 5A. It devotes a lot of my attention, and I know we're going to get there here in just a second. But no, I understand. And you look at 5A, and I would ask you this: how is the Reigns faring in 5A?
They seem to they were very good in 4A. They move up to 5A, and right off the gate, they first game of the season, Orlando Jones, which we'll probably get to very shortly, goes up to Jacksonville in their own backyard and completely demolishes them. First game of the season. I think that set the tone for Reigns in 5A right out of the gate. That jump from 4A to 5A is a very significant jump.
Yeah.
Because the top teams in 4A versus the top teams in 5A, you're looking at a completely different level of competition at that point.
Yeah, no, and I was curious because I know they had, they beat Cocoa in back-to-back years and win back-to-back state championships, and I didn't pay very much attention to them last year when they made the move up, so it'll be interesting to see.
And like I just mentioned with Orlando Jones, they'll definitely be a team to watch this year, as well as Tampa Jesuit. And in 5A, I would also say Rockledge, which, based on our conversations before, I seem to get the impression that they're probably the team to beat in Brevard County.
Yeah, look, you look at Rockledge Raiders. Very disappointing year last year. Somebody might say, well, how is that? Well, they got beat in the first round of the playoffs as the number one seed in all of 5A last year. So, that was certainly an upset in round one. But I think that the big sleeper team this year is going to be the Ogallie Commodores. Head coach Chris Sands and the Ogallie Commodores, they have 5 D1 defensive backs, and led by one of the top 3 defensive backs in the country in Dink Jackson this year. So keep your eye on the Ogallie Commodores.
I agree with that. As soon as I actually looked into them, as soon as you mentioned them before, and I could definitely see them being a threat. The biggest question, obviously, would be with how good their district is, how much further they're going to be able to go, because eventually they're going to have to face Rockledge. Obviously, during the season, they probably had to face them again in the playoffs. then you also throw in someone like a Merritt Island as well, or a Palm Bay.
Right.
They obviously, even with talent, they're going to have a tough road ahead of them to try to get by there.
Yep, and they got a good quarterback coming back this year, Cade Ross. He was a transfer from Kansas last year. He had a difficult time at the beginning of the season adjusting to the speed, but once he had done that, I actually broadcast a game that Cade threw 4 touchdown passes and went for over 400 yards. And so he got it at the end of the year. It's just that when they went over to Tampa, for Coach Chris Sands, you're right. The respect for that team has to be in beating a Rockledge when they play them during the regular season. So all bets are off on O'Galley if they can't accomplish that.
You mentioned a little bit before the show regarding the point system, and obviously, I don't know if I said this during the show or before we came on the air, but the thing with a point system is, with a district like that, it really would end up working against them, which that might be the best district in that region in general. Because the third team in that district, the third team in that district might be better than some district champs in that region.
Yep, I agree.
In terms of 5A South, obviously the two teams worth keeping an eye on: American Heritage Plantation and Miami Northwestern, who actually is got in the news very recently with their coach being suspended for practicing out a season.
Yeah, look, when they say it's not like it sounds, I think there were some off-season workouts going on with his players, and he happened to be at the field. I've seen it with coaches everywhere, but it was a wake-up call to the rest of the state. So if it served no other purpose, and there's a lot of people saying, it's ridiculous, but rules are rules, and he broke them.
The biggest thing I saw is I saw a picture that came out just afterwards. Apparently it had what looked to be at least 40 players all huddled up in the middle of the field, and that was probably the worst possible thing that could have gotten caught on camera regarding Miami Northwestern right there.
Yeah, but, last week, Spectrum Sports comes over to Brevard and does a piece on Davis Mallinger, who committed to UCF, and they took their cameras to a local park, and there was probably 15 or 20 Vieira Hawks on the field with a practice organized by Davis Mallinger, the player, and another player that had organized this practice. So, look, these kids have the right to get together. Now, if he was there coaching these kids, then he deserves exactly what he got. But if this is a situation where he showed up, as some people are saying, and he just kind of hemmed and hawed around a little bit, come on.
I think that's the biggest thing that's going into it, and I believe it's actually being investigated too. So hopefully it'll all be cleared up in due time. Because I agree with you right there. Like, the gap between those two would probably mean the difference between maybe like a 1 or 2 game suspension and being terminated from his position entirely.
Right. That's exactly right.
Because I think the fact that he's got suspended, he'll face some punishment, but obviously how much involvement he had in the practice will determine how severe it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of good players in 5A, and you go down the list. We were just talking about O'Galley. I'm looking at Dink Jackson, ranked 39th on Max Prepp's best players in Florida list. So, look, we'll see what happens. And I know we're going to talk COVID-19 tomorrow night because each county has different stipulations for what their programs are allowed to do and not do. But I really think that to punish, unless it was blatant, if this was blatant, then he deserves the punishment. But if there's any doubt as to whether or not this man was actually coaching his kids and organized this workout, then I think anything else would be unreasonable.
Oh, yeah. For those paying attention, We actually decided mid-podcast that we're going to be doing a two-part on this because it's definitely worth doing. Like, we don't want to